Hello, everyone, and welcome to Magma Rage's episode 47. With me, I have Salty Monkey and Selfmoord. Welcome to the show, Selfmoord.
What
You
up?
are our WESG champion for the general portion of the WESG, which was just all men. um, but yeah, congratulations on winning and booking your spot at the finals in China. For those who don't know Selfmoord, he's quite a talented gamer, I'd say, having had success in a lot of esports in Overwatch. I think you played lots of CS as well. Um,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, far more than that. Like every game I've seen you play, you've been pretty good at. And also, you're a highly competitive person. I know, like having spoken to you, you say whenever you get involved in the games, you get very, very competitive, wanting to really um, be the best, and at least in Hearthstone, that is leading to some success. You have been involved in Hearthstone for a very long time. Certainly, as long as I've been involved in Hearthstone locally, I've known you as one of the players, right up there at the top. And you're also a nice guy. You lent me a jacket at Rush when we were casting because I left my suit at home, like a total dum dum. So that was super awesome. So yeah, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Do you want to tell the viewers anything else that I left out about you? I'm not sure.
Uh, yeah, I'm Jacques. Been playing Hearthstone for a long time, very long time, since the open beta. Basically played Arena for the first year of Hearthstone only, so made so much dust and so on, and
Hmm.
then bought each expansion with gold, basically. Yeah, I don't know. That's me.
Okay,
I enjoy
awesome.
Hearthstone.
Um, so, um, how long have you been taking Hearthstone like serious competitively though? I mean,
It's an interesting one. So basically, I don't even think I played the first season of Rank. When it just got released. I mean, I maybe only started playing the second or third season, and I think I made Legend that season of Control Paladin, and I was like, okay, cool, I can actually play this game
hmm,
competitively. I'm pretty all right. Also played a few, off tournaments in open, closed beta, or like slash open beta. A few
okay,
local guys who had it, and like got a few top finishes and so on. Wasn't too bad. And then since then, I've played whatever tournaments look like convenient or like attractive. I like the community, so
yeah,
yeah. So I haven't played much international tournaments like you guys have as much. I know you've dabbled in a few HET Cups and so on.
yeah.
Um, yeah, but personally not as much. But yeah, like I still take the game seriously when I do play it.
Okay,
Uh,
awesome. And there is some very important news that broke kind of just before we were about to record. So before we get more into you as a player and your WESG success, we're going to talk about the balance changes that are coming. Blizzard announced in the upcoming 10.2 update, there will be some balance changes to some very popular cards. So first off, we have Bone Mare. Bone Mare is now going to cost 8 mana, so we're moving from Bone Mare being a 7 mana 5/5 that gives a friendly minion +4/+4 and taunt to an 8 mana 5/5. So obviously this is going to change the Bone Mare quite a lot. We've seen a lot of these kind of balance changes where you basically just add 1 mana to a card, have a really high impact. What are your guys' thoughts on this change specifically? I think let's start with Self Mode.
well, yeah, like um, Ben Brode always says, if a card is played in every single deck, it needs a nerf. You know, and yeah, it's about time. I always felt Boner was a bit too strong,
Hmm.
especially in tempo decks. The 8 mana, but I think it might have made it unplayable now. Might be a bit much on the curve,
Hmm.
um, especially in tempo-ish decks. So, look, maybe a good thing for the meta, shaking it up,
Yeah.
actually giving more entrants for other decks,
Yeah.
maybe some control decks even. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Oh,
for Bone Mare, one of the important things is that in tempo decks you can still have a relatively high assurance of having a board on turn 7 when you play Bone
Mm,
Mare, but having that same assurance that you have a board on turn 8 is a lot trickier, and that's kind of where
yep.
the big change in the mana cost comes. So your thoughts, Salty Monkey?
Well, Rip turned 7. What's now? What am I going to play now?
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
Golem.
The thing is, I think it's kind of a welcome balance, because even though we've been seeing a lot of changes happening, like weekly changes, um, just looking at Druid and how like it's gone from ashes to being relatively like played in every single deck, well, in every single lineup. I think these changes are going to be welcome just to continuously keep those change in decks coming, just to make it not become stagnant before the new release.
Yeah.
So as much as like what it's going to do to the game, we can't always say, because we say, oh, Galactic Crawler is going to suck, and then it's like amazing. So I don't know whether or not this is going to completely suck, but I'm really happy that they're making changes to keep the game interesting.
Yeah, I think Bone Mare has been present in a lot of decks, and that's definitely going to
Yeah.
change. I think it's going to be a lot fewer decks, if any, that even run Bone Mare after
Yeah.
this nerf. So moving on to another card that has seen play in almost every deck that also has Bone Mare in, and that is Corridor Creeper. The great meme card of Kobolds and Catacombs. Corridor Creeper is now going from a 7 mana 5/5 with the cost reduction for whenever a minion dies while it's in your hand, to a 7 mana 2/5 with the same cost reduction. So basically, just the attack is changing from 5 attack down to 2. And now all of a sudden, I mean, free cards are nice, but a free 2/5, is that really worth it? I mean, at 2/5 now we're valuing that at like 3 mana, right? So, I mean, is Corridor Creeper really going to be worthwhile putting in your deck?
It might be. Like I think like off zoo variants or because it's still a 0 mana 2/5. It's still a 0 mana, still 7 power for 0 mana. And if
Yeah.
you've got a deck with a lot of draw, let's say even Murloc Paladin, yeah, like if you can drop your hand and play, draw again, you should be, yeah, like it's still a 0 mana 2/5. It's still good. Well, not
Sure.
good as it was, but it might still be good.
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing is that at 2/5, it's going to struggle to control the board so much. I mean,
Yeah.
what we see with Corridor Creeper is that in tempo mirrors or aggro mirrors, when you get down Corridor Creeper, it really allows you to control and snowball the board from there. And now at 2 attack, it's going to really struggle to do that. So aggro mirrors are
Mm,
not going to be just a case of, who plays the first Corridor Creeper.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
personally I'm really happy with, because
Yeah.
I think Corridor Creeper overall reduced the skill in aggro mirrors quite a lot, because it largely depended on just who could play the Corridor Creeper, and that's pretty feels bad, man. And
Mm,
personally, I've always really enjoyed playing aggro mirrors.
fair.
I think you're going to be seeing a very different mulligan from now on, because like always you
Mm.
keep the card or keep it. So maybe a different mulligan, which would set a different pace to the game in general. I don't really think it's going to be seeing a lot of play in game. Maybe in like a hunt deck, something that's got beast synergy, it might still be good. Maybe if you want to like be a complete meme and keep a bone mare and combine it with a lovely card or creeper, that's on you. Let me know how it works out. But I don't really think it's gonna go down all that well.
I think you are onto something there though on the beast synergy, but I think that instead of necessarily the beast synergy being great for hunter, it might be for
Good.
druid instead. Yeah, with the mark of
Yeah.
your charge, it might still be a good deck for aggro. I mean, a good card for aggro druid, but
Yeah.
largely I can only really see it staying in those decks. I would not put a corridor creeper in its new state in tempo rogue, for instance.
No.
I don't think that it's anywhere near powerful enough. Um, in a deck that
Well, it's
you
still a it's still a reload your board mechanic. Like
sure, but
if your board, as well as triggering combos.
yeah, but
I guess, but isn't there something better out there that we haven't been looking at before, just because Corridor Creeper was such an easy placement in your deck? Like, isn't there
Mm.
something that's going to make your deck more eloquent? I hate that sentence because it sounds dirty but eloquent at the same time. So can we cut that?
um, I,
um,
personally, I think that when it comes to the combo effect, that is the one thing that, might encourage you to still play Corridor Creeper and Rogue. But largely, I think that you'll just benefit on average from having a better curve. So, we
Yeah.
don't have to take the choice of whether you're playing Scale Banes or not. You're just always going to play Scale Banes instead of Corridor Creepers, I think. And, you still have the Fireflies and then the Flame Elementals that you get from that can serve as a way to activate combo. But it does obviously slow them down a bit, and it does remove that ridiculous tempo turn of playing a 0-mana Corridor Creeper into a Vile Spine on turn 5, which
Yeah.
is just a good thing to reduce the general salt content of the Hearthstone player base.
Sure.
Always good.
Yeah, and speaking of cards that have been very popular in aggro decks, or continuing on that theme really, we have Patches the Pirate, who is no longer in charge, which really
Oh,
raises the question: what is his battle sound effect
does
gonna
it
be?
change his battle cry?
Because it doesn't make sense anymore. I really hope they
Yeah.
change it, otherwise I'm confused.
I
Yeah.
agree.
That's a weird one. Yeah.
Yeah, but Patches now still going to be able to come out of your deck when you play a pirate, but it's not going to have charge. So, you can still have some relatively powerful turns with playing Sassy Captain on turn 3. You're still getting 5/5 worth of stats, kind of, but without having any immediate effect. I'm not really sure that the pirate package is going to be worthwhile running, even in decks like Tempo Rogue. I mean, you might still run
Yeah.
Swashbuckler simply for its card generation effect, but whether you would realistically run captains in a lot of decks now seems questionable.
Mm, yeah, it's still one extra stat and thins out your deck. Like you can
Yeah.
always see it in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True.
no. I mean, you're right there. The thinning out your deck part is definitely still relevant because it just enhances the average draw. Something that was, I think, quite underrated with patches by players, and one of the big reasons that drawing patches is such a downside as well. Drawing patches is even more of a downside now. Like this makes
It's
the draw
basically
patches
useless.
is absolutely
Yeah.
terrible.
Useless.
Yeah.
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 But
So
it's also going to hurt Quest Rogue a little bit, but that's probably not that relevant. Yeah,
no.
Quest Rogue's not really worth discussing. Salty Monkey, your thoughts?
Aw, feels bad, man. Gonna miss old patches. I don't really think there's much to say about it. I do think they don't want it to show up. The whole reason for them nerfing it is they don't want it to be showing up in so many decks anymore. I think that's exactly what it's going to do. We're going to find different ways to approach deck building in a different way. It's going to be completely different without the pirates, which is fair though. I mean, we've been having patches around for a really long time now. Well, it feels like patches has been around forever. So are we gonna miss him? Yeah, we're gonna miss him. Rip patches. I think this is the end of him.
I'm not sure how many people would agree with your sentiment that they'll miss patches, but moving on to our final card, we have Razza the Chained. Razza the Chained now
Oh wow.
reads, if your deck has no duplicates, your hero power costs 1 this game. So basically changing Razza from reducing your hero power to 0 to reducing it to 1. And this obviously reduces the impact it has mostly in the Razza Priest, because reducing its power when combined with Anduin. Having to have the hero power cost 1 obviously means that the Valen kind of OTK turn is not really a possibility anymore, because you're using too many hero powers that there's no way you can fit those alongside Prophet Valen. So that definitely removes the big massive burst from that deck. Whether the hero power at 1 will still be worthwhile is difficult to say. Personally, I don't see the deck being anywhere near as powerful as it was, because it's going to take so many more turns to actually kill your opponent with the 1 mana cost hero power.
Yeah, I don't think the deck's playable anymore, to be honest.
No.
That's yeah. I
Yeah.
just can't see it being played. There might be other control variants now, but it's definitely Razza's not gonna be. Yeah, it's just unplayable. It's a weird nerf for me because it was strong, but not that strong. Like it's strong, but not unbeatable. It wasn't. Yeah.
I don't know. I think the deck was definitely deserving of a nerf. I think the deck was definitely a problem. I think it wins too many games that in matchups even that it shouldn't be particularly favored in. Like
Mm,
even against your Jade Druids, which is supposed to be one of the best counters to it, it still wins too high a percentage of the time. There isn't any
yeah.
real solid counters to the deck, and that's
Okay.
kind of a problem. There's some decks that
Yeah.
can kind of do well against it, but a lot of the meta is basically just warped around
Does
Razza,
he draw
the
Razza? Does he
Razza's
not?
priest. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, both of the Raza and the patches change are changes that seem a bit odd at this point in time because we're nearing the next standard rotation, and both of these cards are cards that will be rotating into wild. So it seems to some players kind of weird that they're nerfing cards that are essentially going away as far as most players are concerned. But I think it is pretty good that they are keeping an eye on wild as well. I mean, they spoke about this in their post. You know, they're wanting to nerf it so that they don't create a terrible environment in wild, and obviously zero mana cost hero powers could have a lot of impact going forward if they print any more kind of new hero cards, for instance, with new hero powers, even though they would never be together in standard, for let's say, like Anduin and Ryza were, and as well as patches and in wild in particular the pirate decks are even stronger because of cards like ship's cannon.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think it is good that they've still kept a mind on Wild. It is quite curious as to why they took quite so long to nerf these two cards in particular.
Yeah.
Raza and Patches, I mean, they've been around since Main Streets of Gadgetzan, which is
Yeah.
quite a while. The Raza Anduin combo was the only time Raza really became a problem, which has been around since Knights of the Frozen Throne. So we kind of had a whole Kobolds and Catacombs expansion, which I'm guessing they were hoping that could deal with the Razza Priest and make it not as powerful before, because players were kind of calling for the nerf already then. And I'm guessing it hasn't really turned out. I mean, I'm not surprised they obviously waited until after the World Championships. I think if they weren't going to nerf these immediately after Kobolds and Catacombs or before Kobolds and Catacombs, they had to wait until after the World Championships because for most of those players, their prep began, a week or two after Kobolds and
Long.
Catacombs
Yeah.
was launched.
Mm,
So I think it would have been unfair on a lot of those players to nerf these pretty much any time between Kobolds and Catacombs release and now. So,
mm.
for some players that are like, why did they nerf it now instead of like 3 weeks ago or, sometime after Kobolds and Catacombs, I think that's definitely something they were considering.
Mm. You
No,
have to
it's
also take into account, understand nerfing a card is, oh, we're calling for a nerf, please nerf this card. It's not always as simple as that because you do have to take into account the very delicate balance that is happening in Hearthstone among all of your cards. And I think it does take a while to sort of decide exactly what nerf you are bringing in. I don't think they just do it off the bat, and I do think they test it very well. So even though, yeah, they probably waited after World Champs, they just didn't just want to bring in a nerf. I do think that they had to balance it properly, even though we're only playing this for a couple of weeks before, the rotations happening. They still don't want to have us play 3 weeks of absolute ridiculous Hearthstone and then just tilt and leave. So
Yeah,
yes.
we don't actually have a date on the new expansion, which is only when the rotation will happen. So we don't actually quite know how long it's going
Soonish.
to be, but it'll probably be sometime March. We're guessing at
Soonish.
this
Yeah.
point. But that is still like pretty much a complete guess. So February at least, in terms of ranked play for HCT points, and the Challenger Cups, etc. That's still going to be a very important month for competitive players post the nerf,
Mm.
as the nerf's going to be
Mm.
happening, I believe, at the beginning of February, end of January. So pretty soon is what they said. Um, obviously they want to do it after the month end so that they don't cause absolute chaos when it comes to ranked, which they're deeming is super important for
Me.
well,
What?
no, super important for HCT players, and players that are concerned about competitive, and
Yeah.
they're determining that ranked is the way that they're gonna give HCT points outside of tour stops. So it's completely reasonable for somebody that is cares about the
Yeah.
esport of the game at all, at least, to wait until the new season
To
before
wait it
they
out.
nerf.
But
So
hey, they've done things before, and we just deal with it every single time. This is
Yeah.
another card, we'll just put it on our list of rip. We miss you, Flame Waker, forever. Love you. Bye.
Yeah.
These things happen, but the nice thing about this, so like, oh, we're gonna miss Razza, that's gonna suck. Cheers, Hard and the Priest. Oh, Patches no longer in charge. But what these nerfs and changes do bring to the game is a different dimension. This is where Hearthstone becomes really special. It enables you to create these decks, and they don't. So the creators of Hearthstone don't sit and create these decks. These are the actual players that create these insane combinations of just absolute witchcraft that you just would never have thought about. So yeah, there's a nerf coming, but the excitement that comes with it is we get to play new decks, we get to play new fun things, we get to figure things out and see a whole new change. It's always awesome. So yeah, thanks for bringing us some ridiculous nerfs. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, the only decks we're going to see now are Qblock counters.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we get
Lacko.
into exactly which decks are benefiting and gaining from this, the one last thing I want to say is that I do at least applaud Blizzard on improving in their timing. You know, with getting this at the beginning of a new season and after World Championships. I mean, previously, like, they nerfed Patron Warrior pretty much just before World Championships, which was weird timing. And then I think Osaka stole one with Patron in his lineup anyway. Um, but yeah, I mean, at least this timing has been a little bit better from them, even though for a lot of the casual players, they're kind of confused as to why it's happening right before rotation. Hopefully, at least we've kind of explained what we think are some of
Helps you.
their thought process there. But the interesting thing that people are going to want to know is who are the winners and losers of this nerf or these sets of nerfs. And we have a fun little segment here where we're going to be going through the losers and winners, starting with the most powerful decks in the meta. And the first deck we're going to start with is Razza Priest. So I'm pretty sure we can all agree this one's a loser. The deck's probably may not even be viable. Everyone happy to
Yeah.
put that in loser and move on relatively
Loser,
quickly?
done and
Pretty
dusted.
much.
Over it. Cheers, Highlander Priest.
Okay. Razza Priest, loser. Zoo is the next deck we're going to be discussing. So there are two variants of Zoo at the moment. One that runs the Keleseth Pirate package, and another that doesn't. That runs a more heavy Demon variant with like Blood Fury Potion and the Demon Fire kind of thing. And I think that Zoo deck, the more demon focused one, is going to be a lot stronger because it doesn't have the patches package to contest with and to contest against from other decks. But the Keleseth version definitely is gonna be weakened from it. So where do you guys see overall, Zoo? Is it a winner, a loser?
Loser, because you still lose you still lose Bone Mare
Yeah,
and
Corridor
yeah,
Creeper.
Royal Creeper.
You're losing. Yeah, you all over losing. So
Yeah. I think I can agree. I think the Corridor Creeper nerf is probably the one that hits Zoo the hardest. And Bone Mare as well. I mean, Zoo's one of the best decks at making sure they have minions on board at all times, and Bone Mare is the one that rewards them for that. So it's definitely going to affect um, the top end for Zoo, and I think they're going to have to go back to a much more demon-heavy package, and we'll see quite how that works out. I imagine we'll see some Gul'dans coming back, because recently Gul'dan's kind of fallen out of favor in Zoo decks. Okay, so next we have Murloc Paladin. So we're talking about the Murloc Paladin, which generally doesn't run the pirate package, so it doesn't run deckhands or patches. So the only card that really is affecting it is Corridor Creeper. That's a pretty big effect because the deck does really focus on having a powerful board, but without the pirate package being present in the meta, Murloc Paladin might have one of the strongest, if not the strongest, kind of early game curves. You know, your Valfen Inquisitors or the Murloc, the 1/2s. I forgot the name.
Raider.
Yes.
Yeah, the
No,
1/2 into
Tidecaller.
Tidecaller. Yeah, the Murloc Tidecaller into like Rockpool Hunter, right? So personally, I would say Murloc Paladin is a winner.
Gains in the overall mate as a deck doesn't gain, but in the overall meta it gains. Yes, agree.
It probably loses a little bit against Control because it doesn't have those Corridor Creepers. That hurts.
It doesn't have something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reload mechanic. But normally you hope to win the game before that.
Yeah.
But you also have to you have to take into account you don't have corridor creepers, but neither do they anymore as well. So generally, as of a general line, it almost stays unanswered. They were unmoved then in that sense.
Yeah,
So,
that's
Mm.
true
just
for
wondering.
the aggro mirrors, but not true for Murloc Paladin versus Control, which is the real tricky situation,
Yeah.
right? That's the tricky position for Murloc Paladin, because in those matchups when you could play a free corridor creeper into your divine favor, that was pretty good. Obviously, a free corridor creeper is almost always good, but when you're it's allowing you to dump your hand even more aggressively for the divine favors.
Yeah.
That's even stronger. So that's a
Yeah.
little bit of something it loses, but overall, I think when it comes to aggro mirrors, which are one of Murloc Paladin's biggest weaknesses right now, I think it's gonna be winning there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it under the winner column here.
I agree.
Okay, and then next we have Aggro Paladin. So this is slightly different from the Murloc Paladin because this is the list that usually runs, your Knife Jugglers, Lost in the Jungle, and generally runs the Pirate package more heavily. Um,
Oh, dude, screw that deck. I lost to it twice in WSG. Anyway, yeah.
so where would you guys put this? Winner, loser?
Oof, I don't know. Uh, I would say it's actually a loser. No, I don't know. To be honest, now I
Uh,
just can't.
Personally, I
I'm
think
on the
this
fence.
deck is a lot more reliant on patches and the pirate synergy than the Murloc version. I kind of don't see much reason to play this kind of aggro paladin over the Murloc package anymore, because you don't have the possible pirate synergy really that makes it work. There's no real point running deckhands, for instance, anymore. Because if they don't bring out patches, they're nowhere near as powerful. Even if when you get them from Call to Arms with a weapon up, they have charge, but overall, I think the Murloc package is still going to be much stronger, at least in the immediate future until Vilefin Inquisitor rotates out.
Agreed.
Mm.
Okay, so we're putting Aggro Paladin under loser.
Yeah,
Uh,
it wasn't that strong to start off with to some extent. Um, and, it was about equal against Razza Priest,
yeah,
and
I mean,
that's yeah,
it was basically like Murloc Paladin, but favored in the mirror. That's kind of where
yeah,
its stats usually lie. But it was a little bit weaker against some of the control decks because it didn't have the big, snowbally Murloc boards.
yeah,
Yeah.
mm, yeah,
Okay, next we have Hunter. So we're just talking about Hunter in general here, rather than any specific Hunter. The only real Hunter we've been seeing is the Aggro Hunter.
Aggro Hunter.
But Hunter overall, I mean, losing Pirates in the meta should favor the Hunter, right? Because their early game was so weak. Now this should make their early game stronger comparatively. They are going to lose their ability to play Galaka Crawler, which did give them some blowouts and was kind of one of the reasons you would play Hunter sometimes. So
mm,
without that,
yeah,
and it's kind of funny that this happens at a time when Hunters finally had a way to start playing the Pirate package. With Deckhands and Candle Shot, they finally had a reason to put patches in their deck. A decent reason to play it. So overall, I'm not quite sure where I see Hunter. I feel like it's still weaker than Murloc Paladin and Tempo Rogue in the early game, even after Tempo Rogue loses some of its big tools. So I personally think Hunter is a bit of a loser, partly because of the corridor creeper nerf. I think that's the big thing
yeah.
that affects the Hunter.
Yeah. So thing is, like, if other tempo variants gets weaker, Hunter was always the tempo deck, you know. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, just because of the pirate package, it couldn't become that strong against other tempo decks.
Yeah.
But overall, the Galaka Crawler nerf probably hits it hard because that was actually a good card in that deck. Not
Yeah.
Galaka, yeah, yeah,
I think
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
the pirates.
yeah.
Yeah, Galaka Crawler was decent because it was a passable card in Hunter, even when you weren't hitting a pirate, and that's definitely gonna basically it removes the necessity to play it, but that's probably a better thing overall for Hunter, because it can just play more consistent two drops, like Kindly
Mm-hmm.
Grandmother and that for the meantime. Um, So I mean, it might get a little bit stronger in the early game, but losing out on the free corridor creepers, especially now when they were getting a little bit insane with like Tundra Rhinos, for instance, is definitely going to hurt them. So I'd say Hunter kind of started off as a loser and is basically going to remain a loser.
Yeah, probably.
Oh,
That was what I was.
Tim, don't talk
Yeah.
about yourself like that. Come on.
Okay, so we're gonna put Hunter under the losers. Okay, next we have Tempo Rogue. So this is quite an interesting one. I think immediately people are like, oh, it loses Bone Mare, it loses Corridor Creeper, it loses Patches. Like that's a lot of really big losses
That's
for
bad.
Tempo Rogue, right?
Yeah.
But I think Tempo Rogue still has a lot of the best tempo tools in the early game, with the backstabs, SIs, and even still Keleseth is not maybe that horrible, even though when you're not pulling out of Patches, it definitely is a lot weaker. Um, so I think Tempo Rogue is definitely going to be much weaker as a deck overall, but relative to a lot of the other aggro decks, I think it might still have game. And I mean, it still has Vilespine Slayer, which is one of its most powerful tools by far.
Well, what are your replacement cards going to be?
Well, I mean, we spoke about it a little bit when we were talking about the Corridor Creepers. Like Scalebane can kind of fit in as more consistently in the Rogue decks. Probably still going to play, or probably going to be playing Lich King more consistently. Maybe even bring back Can. Although Can was kind of mostly there to get Bone Mared on turn 7.
Yeah.
I think it's the Bone Mare one that really hits Tempo
Gonna
Rogue,
hurt
right?
the most. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, now there's no more question. Do you run one chain gang or two? You run two. But instead
Tar
of this,
Creeper?
yeah, I like a Tar Creeper to go like anti-aggro, especially considering how well Murloc will be doing now. However, I would like people to find a different card, something that just elevates Rogue in a different way, something that we haven't thought of before. Like, let's find a different replacement than just the bog standard. I'm sure there's something out there that's. I mean, we've got a lot of cards at disposal. Just find like 3 or 4 combos for the Tempo Rogue
Yeah.
with the Ixnay of these 4 cards.
Yeah. I think
Mm.
I don't think Tempo Rogue will die as an archetype. I don't think it's quite as dire
No,
for the
no,
archetype as a lot of people
No,
might
no.
might think. But
no, definitely not.
I think you kind of have to put it as a loser, right? Based on the fact that it's losing so many powerful cards in the deck.
So many cards,
I
yeah,
mean, you have to
definitely.
say, out of all the decks, it might have made the best use of Corridor Creeper. The
Yeah,
Corridor Creeper Vile Spines, which is nuts turns. And also it made such good use out of Patches and Bone Mare. So I think it's definitely going to be a
yeah,
loser, but still going to be around, unlike something like Razza Priest.
yeah,
Yeah. Agree.
definitely.
Okay, next up we have Qblock. I'm going to include Control Warlock in this as well, so Cube and Control. I think it's pretty obvious to everyone that this is by far the major winner here. It's arguably one of the most powerful decks right now, and none of these nerfs hit it. In fact, the nerfs generally just hit the decks that are good against it, like Razza Priest.
Yes.
So, are we conspiring that secretly game developers are favoring Qblock and just want to see it destroy the world?
Yeah.
Blizzard favoring a combo deck sounds very unusual to me. I think it might slightly favor Control Warlock a little bit more than Qblock, right? Because one of the reasons to play Cube over Control was the Razza Priest matchup, right? Because you could beat them with the Doomguard combo, whereas now you might rather just play Control because it's better in a ladder scenario, right? Because it's better against the wall, like Qblock, right? Control
Yeah.
Warlock is favored against Qblock, so we're just going to be seeing greedier and greedier Control Warlocks, is kind of the way I see it, which it
Yeah.
means more matches going down to fatigue in those kind of matches.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
kind
I
of how
agree.
I see it. I think the Cube part loses, the Control part gains, but everything else is losing far more than, like Cube is
No,
only losing
definitely.
because the Control is gaining more.
This and more. You're probably going to need to run a lot more silences and not even weapon destruction in a
Yeah.
lot of decks because it's going to be dominant to some extent.
Yeah, we might definitely see more tech coming in
Oh, yeah,
for the Control and the Cube
definitely.
Warlock.
I think so for sure.
But
More
it
silences, definitely.
it's definitely going to be a winner. When the whole meta is revolving around teching against your deck, you're definitely going to call yourself a winner. So we're gonna slam Qblock in that winners bracket there.
Give it little stars and everything.
We don't have the technology yet. But next we have Aggro Druid. So Aggro Druid, one of its strengths was the Galaka Crawler kind of thing we spoke about before. Corridor Creeper obviously also was pretty important in that deck, and is definitely going to hurt it. It didn't generally run Bone Mare, so it's kind of okay there. The nerf to the Razza Priest helps because that wasn't a particularly good matchup for it, but neither is Control Warlock, and if Control Warlocks are more prevalent, that's going to hurt Aggro Druid too. And then obviously the pirate package, you're still losing that, and that was still something that Aggro Druid played, either with the Bloodsail Corsair or with the Sarsi Captain. So overall, winner, loser?
Loser, but it's still C play.
Because Living Mana is a good card, right?
Yeah. Well, basically.
Yeah.
You can still snowball.
You still have ways to refill the board, importantly.
Yeah.
You agree there?
Yep.
Sorry, Mikey? Okay.
I hate Druid, so whatever you guys say.
Okay, so we're putting it as a loser. Next up, we have Secret Mage. So this is a deck you don't hate, Salty Monkey. And it's
I
a deck
love
that
it.
has briefly
Okay.
ran the Pirate package with the deckhands
Yeah.
and patches. Basically
still
just
run
to
it.
contest other Pirate packages. Really not because it synergizes in any great way with the deck other than, Aluneth. So I don't think Secret Mage is going to be too sad to see that go. In fact, I think Secret Mage is going to be pretty happy that a lot of the other aggro decks get a lot weaker because the aggro decks were the best thing that preyed on Secret Mage. And Secret Mage is still kind of decent against Cube and Control Warlock, right? So overall, getting a more favorable matchup be more popular should be good for Secret Mage. And its unfavorable matchups become a little bit weaker. So
Agree.
unless the meta becomes really heavy with weapon destruction for the skull, and we're seeing Aleneth being destroyed by the
Aleneth,
weapon, then destruction, then I'd say that Secret Mage looks like a bit of a winner to me.
Agree.
Oh hell yeah!
Or other mage variants, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to Control Mage still.
Well, I'm thinking about more tempo mage variants or burn mage variants.
Yeah. Even maybe Freeze Mage, if things are slowing down, right? You can set up maybe to kill the Warlock with Freeze Mage, although they do have a lot of heal, which can make that tricky. Okay, so Mage is going to be one of our winners. Next up, we have Warrior. So obviously Pirate Warrior is kind of the only viable Warrior deck right now. There's a little bit of people playing Control Warrior, but that's not going to be particularly good against the Control Warlocks either. So Warrior, I mean, Pirate Warrior it's even more dead now, right? After the Fiery War Axe nerf, we pretty much saw Pirate Warrior disappear largely, and now after patches, Pirate Warrior is probably the deck that the patches nerf hits the hardest, right?
Yeah, well, it's unplayable, but yes.
Yeah.
It was unplayable before, but
But the nerfs miss Control Warrior entirely, so technically Control Warrior is a game. Technically. Still a loser.
But the
Still a
meta,
loser.
yeah, the meta is probably going to evolve in a way that Control Warrior isn't gaining much, right? Unless you can fatigue the Qblocks or Control Warlocks, which theoretically with Dead Man's Hand nonsense maybe, but
Tice was playing Kafun Warrior today on Legend Ladder.
yeah.
And so
Okay.
never know.
Okay, so Warrior, we're going with loser for now. I mean, maybe some new Warrior decks emerge, but largely the one viable Warrior deck right now, it's gonna see its power decrease even more. And I think Warrior is going to have to be waiting for new cards in order to find its way back into the meta.
Good.
Okay, next we have the Dragon Combo Priest. So this is the one with a Divine Spirit and a Fires. I'd say, this deck doesn't really lose anything. It wasn't playing the Pirate package, wasn't playing Keleseth. It was pretty much preying on decks like Control Warlock and Qblock as well. as the Razza Priest. So it should do pretty well still. All of its important tools are there, and its favorable matchups get a bit more prevalent in the meta, and
Yeah.
unfavorables less prevalent. So a winner.
Yeah, winner,
Yeah.
definitely.
Winner. I'm happy about this. Can you tell? I've never played the deck, but I'm happy about it.
And next we have a deck that was nice and successful for Selfmoord, but we'll get back to that just now. We have Spiteful Priest. So this is a deck, there were two variants, one that ran the Pyro package with Keleseth, and one that didn't, often ran Netherspite Historian um, and Shadow Ascendant. So
Yeah.
the non-pirate version, let's just talk about that one. I imagine that one will be far more prevalent than the pirate one now. And I think overall that one's a winner. Some of its weakest matchups were against aggro, and now
Yeah.
it's another deck that can kind of prey on the control decks with the crazy
Yeah.
Spiteful Summoner turns.
Yeah, and I'll probably see it as the dominant priest deck now.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Uh,
without Razza, there's really no comparison.
Yeah. And obviously, like, we might see Grand Archivist returning to the deck as well, to, mind control those Void Lords.
Yeah, and it was running Corridor Creeper and Bone Man
Yeah.
in some variants, but it's not key to that deck.
Yeah.
No, you can take out the corridor creeper, fill in with like a couple more dragons.
Yeah.
You're good.
I mean, the Corridor
You're good.
Creeper definitely helped with those Dustbreaker turns for swing.
Yeah.
But I think the deck is still going to be fine overall.
Pretty fun, yeah.
Next we have...
It wasn't corridor creeper dependent, so
Yeah.
you're fine.
Yeah. It was just playing it because it was good. Next we have Jade Druid. So a deck that's also not losing anything. In fact, the Corridor Creepers and Bone Mares being removed from the meta is probably a big benefit to Jade Druid. The Razza Priest being moved from the meta is bad for Jade Druid. And the prevalence of Control and Qblock is also bad for Jade Druid, because those decks are both pretty favored against it, especially if they're running Skulking Geist, which I think will be pretty prevalent in the Control Warlocks, because Jade Druid is going to be a threat to it. Because, I mean, overall, Jade Druid doesn't really lose anything, and a lot of the decks that were good against it lose cards. So, I mean, we kind of have to put it as a winner, right?
Yes. Well, look.
Unfortunately.
You'll probably see more. It might be a loser because you'll see more Qblock. But yeah, Tempo Rogue and Murloc Paladin's weaker, so.
Okay, so winner it is. Next we have Control Mage. So this is the kind of like big spell mage that we saw, Scintillol and Frozen playing at the HCT World Championships. Once again, a deck that doesn't run any of the cards that are being nerfed. And in fact, it kind of preys on a lot of the decks that do run those cards even. So maybe having a lot of the decks that it counters be less prevalent is bad, but it also, has all of those decks getting weaker, so it's going to counter them even harder in many ways.
Yep.
So overall, Control Mage, where do you guys see that sitting?
Okay.
I think it's a winner, and I'm actually sort of happy with it.
Mm-hmm. And it was weak against Razza Priest as well, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, that was a bit of a debated matchup, but it was definitely not. It's definitely not going to be sad to see that matchup go, I don't think.
No, I think the only thing is still like Dragon Priest versus Big Spell Mage. That's kind of an iffy matchup in terms of like you're expecting the Dragon Priest to do well, and then the Spell Mage pulls out a bunch of stuff. So like those two are going to compete against one another really hard in this meta. So winner with a serious contender.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to put Control Mage under our winners then. Next we have Shaman. We're going to be talking about the class in general, much like we did with Hunter. Shaman is pretty irrelevant right now. We've seen some of the like Guild Recruiter into the Faceless Summoner decks be kind of popular, but overall, Shaman has really struggled, especially in the early game, which is kind of where you see, surely that's a good thing then.
Yeah.
With all these other decks losing a lot of their power in the early game, is this not going to be a good thing for Shaman?
Maybe.
I mean,
I still don't think it's good enough.
Yeah, I think much like Warrior, it is not really gaining enough from the other decks losing because it simply has bad cards right now. The freeze package is bad, and the totem package is bad. Basically, they printed bad cards for Shaman for the last two expansions, and that's kind of why Shaman's in the state it's in. Plus, they nerfed
Yeah,
Hex, so that's not gonna help either.
the freeze, what, like, it's the weirdest thing ever. They added freeze to that. I don't know, like,
I
what a
mean,
weird.
maybe the like Hex is still decent enough that if Qblock is popular enough, Hex is okay. I mean, maybe
That's
you
fair.
can run a mid-range Shaman with that, and you can, Hex and still kill them with Bloodlust kind of thing. Even the Earth Shock
But
to
it
get
has.
through the taunts.
I get that, but too much removal, way too much removal in the
Yeah.
Warlock deck.
No, I agree.
Um, and it loses Corridor Creeper, which is actually a pretty good evolve target.
Yeah, and it was pretty
Mm.
good for
Yeah.
Shaman, even though we didn't see Shaman seeing much play. So
Yeah.
I think overall we're gonna just say Shaman started as a loser and ends as a loser again, much like
You
it's
just put it like
Predator and Warrior.
at the like bottom right there
Bottom right,
for
buddy,
Shaman.
for Shaman and Warrior. Okay, we can actually do that. We have that technology.
Bottom right, do it.
Okay, and finally we have Miracle Rogue. So Miracle Rogue, a pretty not been the most prevalent deck really, um, but it is still a deck that is going to gain a bit from a lot of the aggro decks, losing a lot of their early game power. It's not a deck that necessarily has to run the pirate package. It simply ran it because it could. I don't think that losing patches is much of a loss for Miracle Rogue, to be honest. Having a little bit more value is decent. Maybe we even see Miracle Rogue returning to Arcane Giants and Vanish with Valera. It's better against the Qblock like that, and without Razza Priest, the Giants are decent, right? Because one of
Mm.
the reasons the Giants kind of sucked was because Razza Priest would just kill them with Anduin.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mo
so
Miracle Rogue.
I mean, we're talking about Miracle Rogue specifically rather than the mill one. I
Yeah,
don't
but like
really
run some mill cards because
I don't know
to
if you
help against the Q block specifically. But I don't
maybe
know anything about Miracle Rogue, so I'll keep that to you.
I personally think Miracle Rogue is a bit of a winner, because also Qblock is a decent enough matchup for it. It's supposedly a bit of a counter to it because it has the saps as well, for the
Mm.
Void Lords, but mm, the weapon is still a problem for Miracle Rogue, even if you do sap, because they just come back. Um, so overall, I think Miracle Rogue is a bit of a winner, but still not going to be, super powerful in the same kind of breath that we were
Not
saying
winning
here
enough.
for Murloc Paladin, Qblock, and Secret Mage. And then actually one more winner and loser we have, and that is a very, very important one, and that is memes. Memes are definitely a loser here. We're losing Patches meme, we're losing Corridor Creeper meme, even Bone
Fair.
Mare on 7, Razza 5, and an 8. All the memes are getting
Yeah,
hit. So memes are a
yeah.
definite loser here.
Maybe that's what the nerf was all about. It was a meme
Nerf to memes.
nerf.
Feels bad,
Arsenal,
man.
what if Arsenal will not be associated with memes anymore?
It is alright. We will get new memes. The meme will never die. So
Uh,
yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever new memes we get. They're probably going to be some Qblock and Control Warlock based Resident Sleeper ones, when we're
yeah.
watching Control Warlock mirrors and they go to fatigue every time. Yeah, it's like the good old Control Warrior days.
Yeah.
Okay. And now that we have discussed the nerf at length, we are going to go back to the original intended topic for this week's episode, which was Selfmoord's win at the WESG qualifiers over the weekend. Um, you managed to beat Pandemonia in the grand final, um, and are going to be going to China to represent Southern Africa. So congratulations, first off.
Thanks.
Um,
Appreciate it.
Okay, so we have your deck lists up here for the viewers to have a look at, and as they did confuse Yana on the cast as well, they are not as advertised. We in fact have Qblock, Spiteful Priest, Jade Druid, and a Murloc Paladin here.
I always get confused. That's all. All these buzzwords.
I've actually
What was your intention? What was your intention with that? Because like I
I've
must
always
tell
done
you,
it.
as a
I've always
caster,
done.
like I heard, but as a caster, you sort of go, okay, he's gonna play this deck next. You bring up the deck list, and you're like, wait a second, my brain hurts. What again? And I have to go like through it for 2 minutes and be like, oh right. This is what what he's playing. I don't think you like memed, and I don't think you confuse your opponents. I think you just like made me feel super blonde.
See.
No, I mean,
No,
it's
I
purely
don't.
for the meme value, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
there's no one chance.
yeah.
Sorry, like if you're lack for a better word, stupid enough to fall for those names before you play me,
Oh
um,
yeah. No. Then you
then
shouldn't
like
be.
you kind
But
of deserve to
yeah.
lose to me. I don't expect anyone to be
Yeah,
put
yeah.
off by it. I just do it because
No,
it's fun.
true.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
funny though. Good.
Okay.
How did you feel?
So,
Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, you're going to China now, so that's
Yeah.
super awesome. Have you ever been to China before or traveled
Uh,
for any esports? I mean, we spoke about you having been involved in lots of esports.
okay, so I was in China and Thailand about a year ago, so I've been there.
Okay.
Saw the Great Wall and Tiananmen Square and so on. So it was nice to some extent. Look, I have complaints about the country itself to some extent. Um, I had good experiences and bad experiences. Was conned a bit as well, so
Ah,
that's always fun. Um, but yeah, like I'm pretty excited to meet the pros, especially.
hmm.
Like I meet some very cool people, both on like not only Hearthstone, like Counter Strike and so on.
Yeah.
Pretty fun. Um, yeah, and as far as like traveled for gaming, basically just locally, Cape Town, Pretoria,
Hmm.
around South Africa. So nothing international as yet. So yeah, my first time.
Awesome. Um,
Mm.
Love.
so I mean, we spoke a little bit about the deck lists, but what is it that really made you choose these decks?
So personally, at the time, I just felt like priest, warlock, no brainers. Like they are just, in my opinion, by far the strongest decks. I think the World Championships kind of proved that as well. Looking at everyone brought that in their lineups, so I was just like convinced that I have to bring those, because the other way I could have done it is I could have done counter one of those decks, but in my opinion, there isn't a lineup that exists that three decks that counter those decks specifically. So
Yeah, a lineup that is consistent at least. I mean, we saw
exactly,
Scythe
Yeah.
bring basically the lineup that's meant to do that with the quest decks,
yes,
and yet he still lost to Pandemonia in the first round, who was just playing
yeah,
pretty much the
yeah,
standard lineup with those exact decks that he was trying to counter.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and look, and to me, it was between Razza and Spiteful Priest, obviously. And personally, I just enjoy Spiteful Priest a bit more. And the way it high rolls sometimes. I played a lot of Razza Priest, so I just enjoy Spiteful Priest more. Maybe that was a bit more of a biased decision, but I feel like it's just as strong.
Hmm.
In similar
Sure.
matchups. And then Jade Druid I chose because it's consistent. Um, it's quite consistent. Like it can beat most decks.
Yeah.
There's a certain line that you can follow that could beat most decks. So I felt like it's enough of an anchor in my deck. So my hardest choice was the fourth option, which is basically Murloc Paladin, Tempo Rogue, and Control Mage was my other one. And just because I've enjoying Control Mage a lot, I wanted to bring it. But after looking at percentages and running some numbers, and seeing that I'm actually quite weak to Razza Priest, because I knew I was going to ban Qblock because I don't know, that thing can just steamroll you sometimes.
Hmm.
I kind of decided, okay, to be honest, maybe Murloc Paladin kind of rounds off my lineup quite. It's not bad against Razza Priest, and it rounds off my decks quite nice. And I think in this tournament, it one-shot at Razza Priest 3 times. So I'm pretty happy with the Murloc Paladin's performance against it.
Yeah. I've actually been playing that exact same list on ladder, I realized as I was looking at it now,
Ah,
and it's been performing really well for me. I
mm.
just got it off HS Replay. It was basically the top performing Murloc Paladin deck. Oh no, wait.
Yeah.
The version I was playing wasn't playing Bluegills. It was playing Grimscale Oracles. That was the only difference.
Yeah,
Which is
I
true.
was on the fence of like, yeah, but I like the instant value it's out of playing. If you play what's the card
Call
again
to
that
arms.
summons three?
Yeah.
Yeah, Call to Arms. The
Yeah.
instant value you get out of it. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of what kind of nailed that decision for me.
Yeah, you do sometimes get that out of the Oracle as well if you already have Murlocs on board. But I get
Yeah.
what you mean. The
Yeah.
war leader is, I mean the warrior, sorry, is quite powerful with that effect.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the Paladin was just mostly to round up your lineup then. I mean, I think the one thing that kind of sticks out to me with your lineup is that you're also kind of weak to Rogue. You know,
Yes.
when I was discussing with Pandemonia beforehand, it was kind of like maybe you even should ban your Rogue.
Same. I thought about it.
Because you're yeah, the priest isn't particularly great against rogue, the paladin is unfavored, and the Jade Druid is unfavored, but only slightly. I don't think that's anywhere near as good a matchup for rogue. I think if you draw slightly awkwardly with rogue, a lot of the time you lose that matchup. Because the druid is, as you said, quite consistent, and you do have
Yes.
the deck that's slightly better with the Ironwood Golems and the Oaken Summons against the rogue. So I mean, I think that could have definitely been
Yeah.
a weakness. And I mean, I think we saw Pandemonia's rogue win first time of asking against you as well.
Yeah.
Against
So I
was it
agree
Qblock in that
exactly.
case?
Like, I realized I was weak to rogue, um, and because I was actually quite surprised that there were so many rogues. That was actually for me a big thing. Like, I didn't actually expect as many rogues as I did. Um, and when I started looking at the numbers, I'm like, oh, I actually didn't think about it that much. But I wasn't too phased because even if I do take a win against rogue, I mean, I lose against rogue, I still feel confident enough with my other decks to be able to take an opponent down. Even maybe rogue might be a free win for them.
Okay. And
Yeah.
were you targeting anything with your lineup? I mean, usually I kind of look to see if a player is, and looking at this lineup, I would have kind of said maybe you were targeting Qblock and Razza Priest, mostly Razza Priest really, because the Druid you kind of have to ban the Warlock, because it's
Yes.
pretty unfavored there. So it kind of seems like you're trying to be good against Razza Priest, because I'd say all of your decks are actually
Yeah.
favored against Razza Priest.
Yeah, and that's the main reason why I kind of brought a Murloc Paladin instead of Tempo Rogue, because I feel like it's better against Razza
Yes.
Priest.
Yeah, it is.
And so I knew everyone was going to bring it, and so I wasn't specifically targeting something because at the fact of the matter is you just have a kind of a dominant meta at the moment to some extent,
Yeah.
and you can't really go off meta too much and target like you said earlier. There's no three decks you can choose to consistently win against any of those two decks, or yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's
Yeah. And then, I mean, your thoughts on the tournament meta overall for WESG specifically, and you know, your experience of it, of these qualifiers.
so I wasn't too surprised. When I looked at the deck list, I'm like, okay, cool, makes sense. Um, Obviously, biggest surprised by Sife's lineup. You know, and like I said, I was a bit surprised at the amount of tempo rogue, and that I ran into it almost every single game. But apart from that, I like it's pretty expected decks. The dominant decks being Qblock, Jade Druid, and Razza Priest. I'm surprised, like I didn't see more. Well, personally, I didn't see much aggro Druid, which is actually a surprise. I thought I might see a few of those thrown in,
Yeah.
but guess not.
I would personally argue that Tempo Rogue is more dominant than Jade Druid. I think both. I think the Druids, either Jade or Aggro, are weak fourth decks. I think that's one of the biggest weakness of a lot of lineups. That's the one thing that I personally fiddled with a lot in the lineups that we, like Pandemonium and I were preparing beforehand. But yeah, I mean, overall, the tournament, you also came from the arguably tougher side of the bracket.
Yeah.
Although I think you were the one person on our side of the bracket that did actually get to buy first round.
Yeah.
And you had to play Henryless, who was also the only non-South African player, one of the ESL African players from Mauritius.
Good
So,
player.
yeah.
Yeah, like it was a very fun experience. Yes, like when I saw our bracket, I'm like, oof, like the winner needs to come from this bracket or whatever. Like, yeah, look, it's arguably what's the strongest bracket. But I think Pandemonium was the clear favorite in his bracket. Where the topmost bracket was probably a bit unpredictable.
Yep.
And it turned
It
out
was.
that. uh, and like yeah, like I'm actually like I didn't expect to make it as far as I did to some extent. You know, for some reason I always get semis and then just lose. You know, against the likes of Mainland, Pandemonium, etc. Um, but yeah, at least it worked out this time.
Yeah. Um, okay, and how are you gonna prepare for China? Have you kind of set out a plan? I mean, I imagine with the money that's on the line in China, you're definitely gonna be putting in even more preparation than you did for these qualifiers.
So yeah, that's so I'm probably gonna change my whole strategy in terms of prepping because normally I'm not a huge prepper. You know, I watch a lot of like in all my games that I play competitively, I watch competitively. I watch more games than I play. It's
Hmm.
always been my thing. I watch and
Yeah.
emulate to some extent or learn. So I already knew what the dominant decks was because I watched almost every single World Championship game
Hmm.
and I knew how to play each one. Like and so I maybe spent 3 hours prepping for this tournament, like most tournaments I do. You know, I run some numbers, I compare deck lists, you know, I'll check at variance, I check okay, to what I personally like. So I don't play through my decks whatsoever. Like I didn't, for example, what was it? Murloc Paladin I probably played 5 times before that. Probably the Jade Druid I haven't played in ages, especially not that variant. Qblock and the Spiteful um, Priest, I was quite, you know, I knew all the matchups well. But the other two, I didn't know the exact matchup so well, and my win conditions. Inferior, I knew them to some extent, logically, but I haven't played it enough to know the
Yeah.
ideal lines in all senses. So
Yeah.
obviously, now this time around, I'll probably prep a lot more like that, especially unfavorable matchups, where I'll probably play through with, you know, some of you guys in terms of, you know, if it's a very unfavorable matchup, just to practice, you know, different lines in that matchup to see, okay, what is my win condition really?
Yeah.
I'll probably run a lot more numbers, brainstorm a lot more with certain individuals like yourself. Um, so look, with the amount of money, it kind of changes my mindset entirely in terms of how much I normally prep.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my mindset's already in terms of how to play and so on and like the mechanics like I'm pretty happy with like that I don't need to practice that as much but now the finicky things in terms of um, ideal lineups ideal tech choices and ideal ways to play against certain decks that'll be something I do now for the first time
Yeah.
you know to quite a far extent
Yeah.
yeah
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, as we mentioned at the last episode before we had crowned our champion, I'm obviously more than willing to help, and I mean, we've kind of spoken about that already anyway.
yeah I appreciate
Yeah.
So
it
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm obviously hoping that you can do well, and represent our country well. And I mean,
well with
Definitely.
personally,
no
as I said,
pressure
you're a nice guy, so hopefully you do well.
no pressure huh?
I'm
You're
happy
not
to have you as our representative, put it that way.
thanks I appreciate it. What,
Um,
am I going to get a lot of flack if I just fall out in the first round? That's
yeah,
my
yeah.
big problem.
Yes.
If
Yes,
you
we're
if you play
expecting you to
Qblock
do
like you did
well.
in the qualifiers, you'll get lots of flack.
Yeah, yeah, my bad.
I'm not even gonna start on the Jade Druid. But anyway,
Yeah, there I ran out of time because I was
yeah,
like
yeah,
calculating my lines. Yeah,
sure, sure, sure.
um, because
Nah,
normally,
I mean
like I
that's
don't know
fair.
if you've noticed in the past when you've played with me and spec'd me, I never rope. I never ever rope. I always play on instinct basically. I
Yeah,
barely ever roped in any of my previous tournaments, but this one I actually sat through and crawled through multiple lines as well. So I played this tournament a lot differently, just because I've been reading a lot of like poker books and so on. Because I'm now trying to get into competitive poker as well. So
uh,
like that's kind of been helping me thinking differently about the game, running a bit more odds in my brain and so on than I normally would instead of using my instinct as much as I normally did.
huh,
I
interesting.
I hear what you're saying, and I like that. But please don't stop using your instinct, and
Yeah,
don't go far off on the other side, because I think your instinct as a player is actually really good.
thanks. Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I'll try. I'll find the fine line eventually.
Just find the medium, and you're good.
Yeah, I will. I will.
Okay. And then finally, or final question for you at least, and most importantly, will you take me to China as your coach so that I can meet Dog?
Why
That
dog?
was the plan with Pandemonia. That's why I'm so sad that he lost.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll think about it. There's a lot of people who want to go with me. So whoever pays me the most, I'll take.
Pay for the experience of meeting Doug.
Exactly.
Grrr.
I don't
What a what a
like.
what a
How does it
business.
work? Are you allowed to take people?
I have no
Uh,
idea how it's gonna work for the main finals
the guys, yeah.
because yeah.
For us, we weren't allowed, but they do pay for like CS:GO to have a coach because it's a team game. They feel individual. They feel Hearthstone's individual, but what you should be doing is you should be talking to them directly and asking them what they are willing to help you out with.
Yes, of course, because I obviously have a multiple people who want to go. Well, and that I should and could take.
Yeah,
So I'll make that call. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I'd rather not disclose who I should and could take
Yeah,
or
yeah, no,
will take
I was mostly
in terms
joking.
of not hurting
You know.
people's feelings as well as disclosing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
You can take me off the list. I don't want to go back to China. I'm good.
Okay,
The flight's long, bruh.
makes my
I'm
choice so much easier.
Because we all know he would have taken me over all of you guys,
Sure,
like
sure.
any day. Like I am the most fun, so soz dib.
yeah.
But it's cool. I'll give up my spot for dib.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and Yana, you were also involved in the WSG qualifiers. You were actually casting. Was your first experience casting Hearthstone? In fact, casting any
Yeah.
game, I believe.
Yeah.
So how did you find that from the casting perspective? How did you find the tournament and the
Um.
experience of actually casting?
So let's go tournament first. I like the entire approach that both WSG and Metal State took to it and how seriously they were taking it in terms of actually having it streamed and shedding some light on Hearthstone. I feel like for probably the first time in South Africa, like actually really making a deal out of Hearthstone, and I'd like to continue them like doing that and sort of promoting it a bit more. It's really nice for me that they've taken the time and the effort.
Yeah.
I liked the just to see how the South African players have decided to construct their lineups. I don't think it was very different from like what we saw in HCT, but all in all, very good general experience in terms of casting. Need some work, fam. Need some work. It's harder than it looks. You think when you're sitting at home and you're like talking through some plays, like it's easy. I actually find it a little bit difficult, maybe slightly out of my comfort zone. I was also sort of, but I'm scared of saying this because of the flack that I might be getting for it. But I was also sort of running production because of the amount of production that was going on at WSG at the time. I mean, they were doing Dota simultaneously. We didn't have any extra hands, so I was sort of on what is the program called? Over
OBS.
something. There we go. I've never used it before in my life, and I was sitting there trying to figure it out. I think I did all right. Unfortunately, we did have some issues with like the server and like the server lag, and then this crazy thing where if I click end stream, it ended the stream immediately instead of like waiting for the 10-minute upload. Yeah.
You were
And
using
there was
classic OBS, not OBS Studio.
I have no idea what I was using. It was open. So if I clicked on stop stream,
No,
it
I
stopped
know.
everything.
I've had that happen before with
Yeah.
myself.
And it was a bit tilting. So it was, I think on the Saturday when I was casting, if you saw me looking super flustered, it was because I was trying to sort out a lot of things, and I was not even focusing on the plays. So I just heard Penguin talking through plays, and then he's like asking me questions, and I'm like, dude, I don't even know right now. How do I click this button? But all in all, it was really nice to be a part of it, at least. The whole WSG Hearthstone thing is sort of really close to my heart because I got to take part in it myself. And I so want everyone else to have the same amazing experience that I had. So I was really lucky in that sense that Dib decided he's not going to be casting, but rather competing, and that I got to be part of WSG in some other way.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely did a good job first time. I think handling production, especially first time, is very daunting. I mean, like I know what that's like. That's basically what I do for all the casts for ESL, Southeast
Yeah.
Europe they were casting, Africa, everything, because I have the better internet connection basically
Yeah.
over Penguin. I end up
Yeah.
doing all the production side of things as well. And yeah, I mean that can definitely be challenging the first few times. And I mean like there's a lot to learn about like how to handle a lot of the stuff, and we can kind of see
Yeah.
that by how the production for Magma Rages has slightly improved over time.
Has improved. But I've improved from the Saturday to the Sunday. My
Yeah.
Sunday was miles better, except for a little glitch at the end that we are not going to be discussing right now. But generally, I think the Sunday went a lot better, and I got into it a lot more. One problem that I was definitely having, and something that if this is to continue, and even if the competitive Hearthstone scene is to continue for me, is my issues that I'm having with Druid. I can't cast it because, for the life of me, I do not understand the mechanics of that deck the way that I should be understanding it. So casting it, I can't explain what's happening because I'm doubting every single second of what I'm doing. Hence, I need to get Druid sort of down.
Yeah. It
to
is
not
it is a
feel-
big issue with casting. You have to kind of know how to
Yeah,
play every deck to a certain level
yeah,
in order to
yeah,
actually
yeah,
cast it, especially if you're doing kind of the more analyst role of the
yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
casters, and that is kind of tricky. It does mean as a caster you actually have to spend a lot of time playing the game for Hearthstone
yeah.
because your knowledge needs to kind of be almost on par with the players a lot of
With
the
the
time
player, yeah,
in order to cast. So I mean that's definitely a bigger intricacy that comes into Hearthstone casting than probably something like CS:GO or
yeah.
Overwatch.
Well, the thing is with CS:GO, I've been playing CS:GO for such a long time. I've been watching so many CS:GO streams that I think that might be easier for me. However, you would expect the same thing for Hearthstone. Oh yeah, it's just a cast. Everyone was saying, oh yeah, shout casting, and I was like, you're gonna shout cast Hearthstone, really? You're gonna shout cast Hearthstone? You can cast Hearthstone. You're gonna shout cast Hearthstone.
Yeah,
But like even like casting CS:GO, I think casting in general um takes a couple of tries before you get it right.
yeah.
Certain rhythm and everything to get down. But onwards and upwards, I'm going to try again, and I'm going to keep annoying you with my lovely voice until I get it right.
Yeah.
Persistent.
Well, that's good to hear, and I mean it's definitely good to have more casters involved. I mean it's pretty much just been Penguin and I doing it for quite a while. I mean we have had some others like Lions being involved who did DGC
Yeah,
or VSGC this year.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I mean it's definitely good to have some fresh blood. And for other people to understand how difficult it can be to cast and run production and yeah, I mean, like casting is one thing because you have to kind of think of the plays and talk about them. In a way, it's similar to streaming in that sense that you have to
yeah,
describe what's going on. But in casting and well, in playing and in streaming, you can spend your opponent's turn thinking about your own stuff as well. But in casting, you have to spend your like each player's turn thinking about their that player's perspective.
yeah,
Uh, and you can't like
exactly.
one of the easiest things to fall into in casting is to just talk about one player's perspective too much and then you don't
Yeah,
kind of get a balanced, reflection of the
yeah,
game. So yeah, I mean, casting definitely something that needs to be practiced and learned over time. So I'm sure you definitely will improve, as we did see you improve, obviously from Saturday to Sunday, as you mentioned. So yeah, I mean,
let's go, fam.
thanks for covering WESG, and I mean, we had relatively good numbers on the stream.
Mm.
I mean, partly I think because we were on the WESG Hearthstone mainstream,
Yeah, yeah,
which obviously has quite a lot of followers already, so
yeah,
that probably helped. But I mean, we're getting like 40, 50 viewers, which is not too bad for a event that wasn't
yeah,
heavily advertised, I would say,
yeah.
in
If
terms of
I'm
streaming.
not mistaken, I think on Saturday there was 120, but I think that vastly diminished very quickly when the stream ended a bit prematurely.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
when we had
like
the problems, the
yeah.
FPS problems, yeah.
Nonetheless, completely happy with it, and hopefully next time we'll get some more.
Yeah, and hopefully Metal State are happy too and get involved in more
They
Hearthstone tournaments.
actually
That's the hope.
are. Having had a chat with them in terms of Hearthstone, I did explain to them that this year, as I've said before in the previous episode of Magma Rages, I do want to push Hearthstone a bit harder this year. I do want to shed some more light on it and just be a bit more involved, and maybe get a couple more girls involved in general and spark some interest. And they were completely behind it, so we might be seeing a lot more Metal State Hearthstone related things in the future. Not saying anything, can't give anything away, but they do seem to be pretty happy with Hearthstone. So stay
Awesome.
tuned for that.
That's
So
cool.
Magma Rage is the place to get your hot off the press, fresh rumors about more future Hearthstone events. But that is all we have for this episode. It turned into quite a long one thanks to Blizzard's sudden dropping of the balance changes. But thanks for adapting on the fly, Salty Monkey and Selfmoord, and thanks for joining me a lot today. Salty Monkey is going to be joining us on a more permanent basis, I suppose, as a new co-host, as Zaymok is not really going to be involved at Hearthstone too much this year, as he has other school and other things to focus on. So Salty Monkey is basically going to be replacing him as our more permanent co-host. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of her.
I'm in charge now.
Which isn't going to make much sense after the nerfs anyway. But but yeah, so you're going to be seeing a lot more of her. But thanks, Selfmoord, for joining us. First time we've had you
Thank
on,
you.
and a good reason to have you on as well. And once again,
Yeah, thanks for
congratulations on
having.
winning, and best of luck in China.
Congrats.
Um,
Thank
Appreciate
you.
Yeah. For those who want to find out more or contact us, you can find Salty Monkey on Twitter at Salty Monkey. With that's I say it like that because it is a KEH at the end. And for myself, you can find me at dib_gaming. Selfmoord doesn't have Twitter, so his title is just WESG champion, which I mean for Southern Africa, but I didn't want to add the qualifier. It sounds fancier.
Yeah.
And it's a prediction for when he eventually wins the main WESG event. No pressure. And obviously you can also follow the Twitch stream, my Twitch stream, D1B_, where we stream Magma Rages live. And you can also follow or subscribe on YouTube, where Magma Rages episodes go up every week. So thanks a lot to everyone. And also shout out to Emo Kylo Ren for the intro video. Thanks a lot for that. And yeah, we are always open to feedback, so please give us any feedback, and please also share the podcast with anyone and everyone. It really does help. I mean, we got quite a lot of views on 45, I think it was, thanks to one of the viewers posting on Reddit, which, those kind of things really help. Got over 1,000 views, or over 1,300 views on that episode. So hopefully, that can kind of continue. Please share the video wherever you can, whether it be Facebook, Reddit, anything like that as well. That always helps a lot. So, yeah, thanks a lot, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Cool.
Bye.
Cheers.